Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. With me is Hayden Howerton. SMU defeats Miami 26-20 in overtime in a historic win in Ford Stadium. We break all that down on the game side of things and go inside the film room with Hayden on this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast, presented by Northwest Insurance Agency, that starts right now.
Remember when your biggest worry was finding parking at Dallas Hall? Now it's protecting your home, your car, maybe even that first business. That's where Northwest Insurance Agency comes in. Exclusive coverage designed by Mustangs for Mustangs who've galloped into the real world. Protect what you've built and move forward with confidence, because once a Mustang, always moving forward.
Northwest Insurance.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Man, what a weekend in Ford Stadium as SMU defeats Miami 26-20. I'm Billy Embody. With me, Hayden Howerton. Of course, we're presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency. 214-352-5656 is how you can get in touch with Mark Villasana and company to make sure that your rates, your coverage, and more are all in the right place. And SMU, right place, right time to get an upset of a top 10 team. And for Hayden Howerton, you enjoyed this one just as much as anybody else. You were in the stands catching this, and what a weekend, what a day for homecoming on the Hilltop.
What an awesome environment that this was, not just from the upset win, but Ford Stadium was absolutely rocking, and even the Boulevard was for an 11 a.m. kick. We had our friends at ACC Huddle on site. It was pretty awesome seeing the new spot that they had right there on the lawn of Dallas Hall, but the response by SMU was really the story of the day after that defeat last week at Wake Forest. And Rhett called it a cultural win from the injuries that you went through, the adversity. And look, SMU responded in what's the highest attended conference game in SMU history. Over 35,000 strong were at Ford Stadium. That thing was absolutely packed to the gills. And it looked pretty sweet on the ESPN Skycam as well. It's always one of my favorite views. But I'm really proud of this SMU team. They were able to respond, and they were able to finish a one-score game in the fourth quarter. This game was tied at 17-all heading into the final 15 minutes of the battle, and we come out the other side after overtime, some bonus football, with our first one-score victory of the season. Really proud of how this SMU team came out. They were ready to go. They could have easily had that slump coming off the other side of Wake Forest, and they're able to respond to get a top 10 win that ended with the goalpost at the Fountain in that very same Dallas Hall lawn.
That's right. And look, now that SMU's gotten the win over Miami, go up to Boston and support them this weekend. We'll preview this kind of a different programming approach because just personal life things getting in the way here in a good way. Happy birthday to Mrs. Howerton over there. So you guys had a good time celebrating her, but make sure you guys celebrate this Miami win in style by getting up to Boston with our friends at StatusJet, statusjet.com. Reach out to David Henry and his team today to get you lined up with a discount on a round trip flight. When you mention you found out through On the Pony Express, they'll get you dialed in with that discount. So check them out. Make sure it's all lined up for you. Just start the process so that if it doesn't work out for Boston, maybe it works out for Cal. Maybe it works out for SMU Duke in January on the hardwood, or maybe SMU can work some magic and find a way to get into the college football playoff. Wouldn't that be something? And look, I would bet somebody a car at this point that SMU has every shot available. And look, I'm willing to put some employee pricing on the line that SMU can make its way into the college football playoff. If things go the right way for them down the line, they'll need a little bit of help to get to the ACC championship game. But the Thomas Auto Group will have you covered on the right price at the right time for you with any of their Ford dealerships up in McKinney. Visit them, check out their new pre-owned vehicle options for you. Their Ford, Subaru, Volkswagen, and Mitsubishi dealerships. They'll get you all taken care of and throw you the keys on your way out.
Well, they're going to throw you the keys, but when I'm looking at my keys to the game, there's a lot of green here on this page. The very first key to the game that I had was win the opening drive. And while SMU loves to take the ball if they win the toss, this was one that I didn't really care if it was offense or defense to go out and win their first time out. And SMU won the toss thanks to President Bush, and we deferred. Same thing that happened at Clemson, interestingly enough. And you go out and you force Miami to punt, and offense gets the ball. They fumble on the 4th and 1. But if offense had gone first, I think all of the momentum would have swung for the Hurricanes. And look, I love and believe in our offense, but if I'm Rhett, I'm going to defer to the second half for the rest of the year because SMU's first drive out of halftime ended with a touchdown after you go 9 plays, 79 yards, and that swung all the momentum back SMU's way as you take the lead coming out of half. So you get a green check there as you win the opening drive. The second key to the game for me was you had to force Carson Beck into making some major mistakes. I thought he needed to be under that 60% completion, and then I thought this defense needed 2 trips to club takeaway. I was right on the money as 2 interceptions thanks to Ahmad Moses, but Carson Beck did surpass that completion percentage, 68%. It really didn't matter because you limited that damage done. Carson Beck was throwing some really nice balls, especially late in this game. He was putting them right on the money. I didn't know if we were going to be able to stop him, and it was only a matter of time before he made a mistake. Even the Miami fans were saying that. He cost the Miami the game with that interception in overtime that gives SMU the ball where all you need is a field goal. And really, that's the second time this season that a late game Carson Beck mistake has cost Miami not only the game, but now their shot at the college football playoff. My last key to the game, and the only one that I think could be a push, I said we had to win the field position battle, but what I really meant by that is just special teams. You needed that third phase of the game to be able to keep us in that ball game. I think special teams did a good enough job in this game. There were a couple big field goals by Sam Keltner. You did give up that big punt return in that game to a very explosive Miami returner, but you end up forcing a field goal on that. It didn't end up hurting you too bad. So we're going to go with a push there for that field position battle. So 2.5 out of 3. Lots of green for my keys to the game as SMU is able to get it done.
You know, I think the key that stands out to me the most is that club takeaway because obviously Ahmad Moses, those 2 interceptions that he had were just massive. And for SMU to obviously get the one in overtime, 0-0 ball game, anybody can have it. You can kind of flush all the rest of what's happened in the previous 4 quarters in a sense. And for Ahmad to go out there, make that play, one, silly kind of decision making there by Carson Beck. I was kind of in a bad angle on it to kind of see how good of an angle that Ahmad had on it. But Malachi Tony had kind of slipped like behind him in a sense, but Ahmad just undercut that and really, from what he kind of alluded to, that was all film study. He knew that Malachi Tony was going to whip it back inside and he was ready to be on there and make that jump. The other one is great athletic hand-eye coordination to catch that ball off of Josiah Trader's pause after he had already had a touchdown in the game. So he was kind of on his way to making a huge impact. And, for Ahmad Moses to grab that, huge. Obviously, that really kind of cut Miami's momentum that they were kind of starting to build there. And then SMU able to take advantage of those 2 turnovers, scoring touchdowns off both of them. Obviously, the game winner everybody knows about, but that Kevin Jennings kind of scramble throw to Ymir Knight was just absolutely money. Really kind of settled down the whole team, I think, for them to go out and tie that game at 7 with that throw. And I know we'll get to kind of breaking down a lot of the game overall, but I really feel like obviously those 2 turnovers, the most important for SMU. And look, once again, SMU plays a clean football game, turnover free. Look where it gets them. And kudos to them for winning the turnover battle, of course, but couple that with not committing 1 turnover. That's really important. And look, the turnover on downs, I don't know if they would have gotten it on that play, but I could have done without the window dressing there. So
I don't think they had it either way. I did not put this one on the film room, but ultimately the guy that ended up recovering that ball, he was right there. I think he would have made that tackle anyway, to where that fumble, if you even want to really call it a turnover, which it's not, it would have been a turnover on downs. But ultimately, I don't think we had that anyway. But to your point, Billy, about kind of getting the momentum, getting this team settled in, I think going into this game, there was a little bit of that. Oh my gosh, it's Miami. Look at the logo. It's Goliath. And for you to go out there and get that score to Ymir Knight where he is so wide open, and Kevin did put it on the money. There was nobody even close while he's scrambling around and doing his deal. That was one of those where everybody in the stadium kind of when you jog off to the sideline, kind of took a deep breath, and it's like, all right, we can hang with these guys. We can get into this game, and you settled in and you took over the game from there.
And look, speaking of settling in, our friends at Los Charros are settling into basketball season first and foremost. They are going to start being open later for those late games. Coming off of homecoming weekend, they did not stay open later than their listed hours. Make sure you check those listed hours. But Los Charros is right there on Hillcrest, right across from SMU. They just unveiled their new smoker, Mustang Sally. Incredible story behind this involving Peggy Sue's. So kudos to Corby Farrell and the whole team at Los Charros for getting this thing done. Make sure you check them out on game day when Louisville comes to town in a couple weeks. This is going to be a really, really cool place for us to get some meetups going post game as well. We're going to work with them on communicating when they're going to stay open and things like that after basketball games. So stay tuned to ontheponyexpress.com and our socials, and we will let you guys know when Los Charros is going to be open late. We'll kind of send some reminders out and things like that, but they're right there at the Graduate Hotel. You can whip right in, toss the keys. There we go with keys again to the valet, whip in for some of their great food that they've whipped up, and you can enjoy a margarita with our friends at Socorro right there. So this is a great spot for you guys. And again, Socorro Tequila, shout out to them. You can see them kind of right there. Sticking out behind me on the wall, and Socorro's been an awesome partner. They were out on the boulevard with us, and supporting SMU. They're an official sponsor of SMU Athletics, so make sure you ask for Socorro Tequila when you're getting your next margarita or tequila drink, and try some of their craft cocktails on their website too. So you can do all of that and more at Los Charros and Manny's and all those places. But we appreciate Los Charros and Socorro for supporting this edition of the podcast.
Had a couple margaritas last night for Kara's birthday. Asked for it with Socorro. Very smooth. Ended up having a great time with my wife last night. But another great time was this SMU offense. And Kevin Jennings is such a warrior. We talk about it after every big game he has. I mean, he is just one of those guys that goes out. When his highs are high, there will never be a more storybook quarterback for SMU than Kevin Jennings. Highest graded game of his career by PFF, 29 for 44, 365 yards. Career high, and then his fourth 300-yard passing game on his career. He did have one passing touchdown. He added another rushing touchdown on the ground. No interceptions again for really the second game of the year that he's played turnover-free football, and it's been a big momentum shift for this offense when he's able to do that. He comes into this next week. He's third now in ACC passing touchdowns with 18. Darian Menza is first with 21. CJ Bailey at NC State is second with 19. And then he's second in the ACC in passing yards at almost 2,500. Menza is first with just above 2,500. So he's right there in both categories. But his ability to lead this offense against the ACC's number one defense to 26 points, including a game-tying field goal in the final 2 minutes of regulation, is just one of those stories that we're going to sit around here when Kevin Jennings is gone doing his thing, and we're going to be like, hey, remember that time that Kevin Jennings led the SMU Mustangs to a top 10 victory? But another guy who's just a certified dude and was able to go out and have a huge day, Jordan Hudson, 11 receptions, 136 yards, multiple key conversions, and then Billy, watching the toe drag out of bounds, that one was absurd. But he was also nearly decapitated by Miami when no flag was called on that just horrendous face mask. But ultimately hangs on, gets another first down for SMU. But SMU tied Miami with 9 explosive plays on the day. But it was all the receivers, as the run game, unfortunately, was pretty much dead on Saturday. -2 rushing yards on 19 carries, which is super concerning for me. As the former offensive lineman, you haven't been able to run the ball now in 2 consecutive weeks. But I want to say the difference in this game, the running lanes were just closing immediately. Miami has a number 3 run defense in the country now. I think the offensive line was playing through a ton of injuries, and guys stepped into roles that they hadn't really seen a lot of action for SMU. Savion Byrd, I thought, played really well at the left guard spot. We have not seen him play guard, I don't know, ever at SMU. He played a little bit of Oklahoma. He's more been a tackle body for us here. When I was helping Coach Justice, my time between the NFL and kind of modern day life for me, Savion was one of those guys that we looked at as being a tackle only, where we knew he could play guard, but he was just so athletic and he was kind of set in his mind as being a tackle only. Coach Justice has really been able to mold that ball of clay into a guy that now we're able to throw in at left guard when the situation calls for it. So that's really cool. It was a tough day for the running backs overall. TJ Harden does slam the door on Miami's playoff chances with that game-winning touchdown from the one. The 4 straight rushes to end the game were the silver lining for me for this running game. And it's important to note, I'm not stomping on our run game's ability. It's more that I'm pleased that we found another way to win this game.
Massive that they did, and in overtime, being able to run it down their throat and close that game out. Very, very important there, and shouldn't be lost on, I think, the will of this team. That just like how they can set their mind to something and do something and accomplish it. That drive, probably out of all the things, obviously you're happy for the win. The win tells the whole story. But that drive from the offense's perspective, you haven't done anything on the ground all day, and you go out in overtime, and everybody knows you're going to run the ball, and they had stopped you all day. And when you need to move the football on the ground to help out Sam Keltner potentially, you do it, and you run it right down their throat and finish the game. Like, that is something that if you can take something from this past game that did not necessarily go well, but you can say, hey, we finished it kind of the right way. Let's try to feed into that a little bit more. That's the biggest piece, especially when you're talking about going up the road or up on the road to Boston College, where it's going to maybe be a little wet or rainy and cold. You want to be able to run the football. You want to be able to make that statement. I think really, really important that they were able to do that against as talented of a front as Miami is. It doesn't negate that they did not run the ball well at all, but you've got to at least have some confidence that they're not going to just obviously fold up shop. They're going to rebound. They're going to have a chance if they can really focus on the things that they did well. And potentially SMU going to be without Logan Parr. He got hurt against Miami and questionable this week at Boston College. And so this offensive line, once again, going to have to kind of figure things out. I'm interested to see how Garen Justice is going to have this thing playing out, because for most of the night against Notre Dame, Boston College, stopped the run. That's a podcast for a different day. But, SMU's offensive line deserves a lot of kudos for kind of banding together and stepping up when this team needed it to in overtime. And they gave KJ time most of the day too, so the pass protection was great. But just a really, I think, encouraging day offensively in a game that, at times it wasn't perfect. Don't get me wrong, we all know that. But you're playing you're playing a top 10 team in the country. It's not going to be, the most perfect thing out there. And for the most part, SMU was able to avoid some really crippling mistakes, and it allowed them to hang around and then make the comeback late, scoring 10 points on their final 2 drives and winning this game.
Yeah, and there's been so many variables with the offensive line, with the running backs, even the tight ends at times, where it's been hard for this running game to kind of mesh. And it sounds like I'm making an excuse, and at the end of the day, maybe I am. But ultimately, if this team has the ability to kind of settle in and who knows, maybe now if Savion gets his second game at left guard, obviously we would miss Logan Parr if he does miss this weekend. But Savion has that ability to where I texted him after this game. I really thought his eyes and his speed of his mind has gotten so much better since he stepped foot on campus. I think it's one of those things that moving him inside to guard actually might be a good thing if you can get Andrew Chamblee on the right page, as I saw Savion on I think the only sack of the game that we gave up. I saw Savion trying to bump Andrew Chamblee off, where he knows what's going on, probably because he's played tackle and he's seen that look 100 times. But ultimately, to have a guy out there that maybe you don't expect to be playing at such a high level do that really would raise everybody else's competitive level. So at the end of the day, I gave this offense a B+. Obviously, the Kevin aspect of it, the big passing day for him, all of the receivers kind of just putting the game on their back and doing such an outstanding job against Miami's defensive backfield. But Miami's front seven is so talented. They're able to stop the run up until the very end. I just can't give us an A without getting over the 100-yard rushing mark, in my opinion. So I'm going to stick with a B+. I'm also going to give that grade to the defense. I was very impressed with how far this defense has come. The last 3 weeks, defense has balled out for this SMU team. There's only been a few times that SMU has won football games without hitting the 30-point mark. And before y'all jump me, I just have to set the scene. I think some people are probably like, well, defense deserves an A+ for that performance. But Miami killed us in the time of possession battle. Almost 38 minutes to 22 minutes. It really limited our time with the football, and maybe that would have carried us over the 30-point mark if we would have had just a couple more opportunities. Miami ran 78 plays. Their style of offense, choose clock, it just suffocates opposing teams with. And then you pair that with Miami's very good defense. That's how they've won all these games. But Carson Beck had unlimited protection, which essentially made it really tough for our defensive backs. There was no sacks for our defense on Saturday. But I just want to pair that with Miami's offensive line is elite. Left tackle Markel Bell, he's going to be a 10-year vet in the league. He was a JUCO product, transferred into Miami, 6'9", 340, but he plays with premier leverage and technique. And I was so impressed with his pass blocking because when I'm watching it on the film, he's the first dude out. I mean, he's jumping the snap count. He's getting in a great spot. He's patient. He plays really long arms. I mean, it's no wonder that we weren't able to get home. I mean, he is a premier left tackle in the country. He's my All-American pick, just for the record. But the group that was wearing the SMU blue that impressed me is our preseason All-American safeties. I mean, Isaiah Wokobia, he's improved each of the last 3 games. He had 10 tackles on Saturday. We're starting to see what we expected out of him going into 2025. Ahmad Moses, we touched on it earlier, absolutely balled. Led the team with 15 tackles, 2 picks, including the overtime one as Miami was driving. And look, Miami was on the 6-yard line, and you want to talk about running the football in overtime. I mean, Miami was running the ball. A touchdown was imminent there. They have been able to run the ball essentially at will all day and just pair these 2-3-yard runs one after the other. And I'm confused by Miami before you even go to overtime because they took a knee, 30 seconds left. You know, they had a timeout and they just choose to send the game to overtime. But hey, you know, we take those breaks when we can get them because they also, I thought, should have kept running the ball in overtime. But hey, whatever. We're able to make a big play on defense. And maybe that's why Mario Cristobal ends up on this hot seat that he's kind of starting to find himself in as Miami falls apart late for the second year in a row. But it wasn't perfect. SMU gave up 2 passing touchdowns. You knew with the talent that Miami had that it was probably only a matter of time before that was going to happen. But a player that continues to impress me besides the 2 safeties, Brandon Maiazono. He saved the touchdown with that big hit at the goal line. He knocked the pass incomplete. And guys, I bet next year he's going to be one of the guys wearing the C on his jersey. He's caught in a lot of heat from people around the boards. People were coming after me for saying he's one of my favorites earlier this year, but he's filled in. He stepped up in a huge way for this program, and he plays football the right way. I love watching that guy. So B+ for this defense. I mean, just out physical Miami at times. I mean, multiple short yardage conversions that were stopped short. I mean, what a job by our D tackles and really just everybody stuffing the run when it counted.
Yeah, to build off of the Brandon Maiazono love that's going on, he added the neck roll or whatever it's called there, the
cowboy collar.
Cowboy collar. Thank you. I mean, perfect timing for him to be rocking that against Miami. And we had a videographer who's doing some great work for us that was shooting the game. Cooper.prod, Prod on Instagram for those who want to follow him. He had this great shot of Carson Beck on one of the false starts, and he drops back, and you know the play gets whistled, the false start's going, false start gets called. Brandon Maiazono is the one coming across, like is going to decleat him if the play is live, and then stop short and just starts just yapping nonstop, like a little, like a big dog, but like a little dog, just like killing him. And it might have been Brandon Booker or somebody else kind of came in and ushered him back to their side of the ball. But Carson Beck, starts chirping back at him. So, they were trying to get under his skin. And I wouldn't necessarily say that it worked, but he was uncomfortable when it mattered. I felt like he kind of had a little bit of that happy-ish feat at times. Again, SMU didn't do a tremendous job of sacking him. I don't one sack, I think, maybe on the day, zero sacks. So there you go. Or maybe I have that wrong. Yeah, 0 sacks on the day from what I have here. But you have a quarterback who I don't think is necessarily great at owning the game. He is a game manager. That is kind of what he was brought in to do. And Miami didn't have CJ Daniels in the game, which was, I thought, huge for them and their offense. But he was still able to be productive. But I just think at times he was uncomfortable. So I know that isn't a stat or anything like that, but just watching his movements, they were able to kind of impact him a little bit in a sense. So really, really good job there by Brandon Villasana trying to do everything he can to get under his skin. And Brandon Booker for SMU also playing some good ball as well. 5 tackles on his day, including 1 solo. So overall, I mean, this defense is kind of settling in. This isn't a performance that is going to, from a yardage perspective, wow anyone, but to hold Carson Beck under 300 yards, to kind of limit, I think, just enough the Miami run game, a pretty good situation overall for this defense coming off the game.
And you're talking about Carson Beck being uncomfortable. I had to grade the crowd impact for this game. I gave the crowd an A+.
Yeah.
5 procedural penalties for the Hurricanes with 4 false starts and a snap infraction. And after one of those, you see Carson Beck, he starts crashing out. And I think that at that point is when the stadium got even more into it, because you could feel how the environment at Ford Stadium was impacting Miami. And is Ford Stadium a 70,000 person stadium to where it's just absolutely deafening at all times? Not exactly, but it was the most into the game for 4 straight quarters that I had seen this stadium since my time stepping foot on the hilltop. And then you saw it. People had compared the field rush versus Houston in 16 to the field rush now. Just 2 completely different football programs. But we talk about special teams as well, because I do have to grade them. I gave them a B-, so the worst of the 3 only by a minus versus a plus. It was not for the missed field goal. I thought that was in. I was texting with Bill. Bill thought it was in. From what I read, here's the official rule. No part of the ball can be outside the upright. So what that means is if the very outside edge of the ball goes outside the edge of the upright, the outside edge, it's no good. So by rule, if the ball goes directly up and over, it should be in as long as there's no overhang. I didn't see any overhang. I know it's a unreviewable play from the official's perspective. Rhett talked about it. They're not even looking at the scoreboard when he's talking to them about it, because we're showing the replay, 50 times in the stadium. But ultimately, it didn't bite us, but it was one of those things that if the game had not gone our way, there would have been an outrage. Similar to how Miami is acting right now on social media. They're acting like every call just went against them, which couldn't be farther from the truth. But look, so I'm not counting that as a missed field goal for Sam Keltner. But without that, he's 2 for 2 on the day. He has a 43 and a 38-yard field goal. Both of them were in super clutch situations. Wade McSparron, I thought he recovered nicely from last week when he had a down week. 2 punts inside the 20. He had 1 punt over 50 yards for a 43-yard average. Miami only had 1 punt return. I do have this on the film room, so stick around for that. Malachi Toney, he got loose. He was tackled inside the red zone. We need to work that when it's such dangerous return men. I've heard this song 1,000 times with SMU football. Why are we kicking it right to them? It blows my mind. But
I said that to somebody. Well, I guess it was Dean, obviously sitting next to me in the press box, and I said, I've seen so many SMU football games, and I know this is like, you can say this, and obviously when you say it, you can be the know-it-all or whatever. That's like, see, I told you or whatever, because most times you aren't going to have a back-breaking play, but you've seen it, enough. You lived one of them, that it just take it out. You know what I mean? Like at SMU, I would love to have somebody do a deep dive, and you could call it like the special teams impact rate. When special teams makes a play that alters the course of a game from a return perspective, and then you can get the defensive stat, blocking a punt or something like that. And SMU probably over the last 15 years across multiple coaches would have one of the worst rates of having impactful moments in big games from special teams, from, done against them. I don't know. It just that one you could just almost see it coming a mile away, and then once they lined it up, and then with two potential blocks in the back in there, and you knew they weren't going to get called, and you're just like, here it is. But hell of a play to obviously get him tackled short there, and you'll show that on the film room though.
Yeah, serious effort play there. Maybe that's an off-season deep dive that I got to make. Just diving back on all the special
15
teams
years.
wonders.
Yeah, good luck.
I mean, Houston, Memphis. I mean, all of them, man. It was tough. I lived through a few of those, but Link Rhodes, he had a great return of his own, 40-yard return right up the gut for this kickoff return unit, and I think he brought out a questionable return from the end zone. I mean, you put the offense in a tough spot. He was essentially on the very back line, and he almost fell out of the back of the end zone and still chose to take it out. I was a little confused on that. So that's where this B- kind of plays in, is just kind of those two plays right there. But ultimately, this was one of those days where special teams kept you in the game enough that offense and defense could do their job.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think the Link Rhodes return was really nice. And then also coupled with Miami having a complete failure on their kickoff return, down inside the 10 or something.
Yeah.
Just knucklehead. I understand what he was maybe thinking they're catching it, but you're catching it on the run and it's going to take you out of bounds. So I don't.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
it was early, and I think it indirectly led to SMU's first touchdown because they were pinned back. They throw the pass. I think it gets picked off. Kevin then leads them and throws that touchdown. But you had, like, the only thing I could think of is, okay, it's wet. Maybe he's thinking if I let this ball bounce, it sits and sticks somehow. But that thing's either going out of bounds because it's slick, or it's going out of bounds, or it's going out of the back of the end zone because it's slick. In my opinion.
Billy, I've seen guys toe drag going out of bounds on kickoff and punt returns. It's like, dude, just let it bounce, man. Yeah. So I don't know if he was thinking all that. It was just a brain fart by him.
Yeah, no question about it. But what I can tell you is you could take that guesswork out of college football tickets with our friends at Game Time. So I'd encourage people to do that for this SMU Boston College game. Don't be caught tight roping the sideline on this one. Go grab your ticket for SMU BC. You can also look ahead to SMU Louisville, of course, the last home game. Make sure you get your tickets for that. But reasonable prices here, Alumni Stadium in Chestnut Hill. So make sure you download the Game Time app today. And again, take advantage of all of the different features that they have, like the zone deals, or you can click your favorites list of your favorite teams and just quickly go down the list of those top tickets that you want to look at. And you could even take a look at your seats from the seat view that you're going to have. And it's, of course, the lowest price guarantee that they have, where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference when you find tickets for less at the same section, row, seat for less somewhere else. So that's another reason to always go to Game Time, because you have all the fees included, so you know your total up front, and so there will be no surprises at checkout. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code ON3, ON3, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Create that account, redeem code ON3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today.
Get your best seat in the house with the Game Time app. I'm trying to bring you guys the best seat in the house with the film room. It does make the return after this big top 10 victory over Miami. And look, this film room, there's not as much times that we out-schemed Miami, of just guys that really just outplayed Miami. I think there were a lot of examples on this film room of guys either playing harder or out-executing, or guys just not willing to be denied. I mean, there's a couple plays of Jordan Hudson just embarrassing their defensive backfield, which is really fun for me to sit back and watch. But ultimately, this SMU team went out and just out-executed at such a high level that you knew from really that first touchdown over to Ymir Knight in the corner, this was going to be a fun day for this SMU team. So thanks again for the SMU staff allowing me to bring this to you guys. I texted our source earlier this week, said we owe him a golf round this offseason. So yes, we will be sure to bring you guys that this offseason. But for now, sit back, get comfy, and enjoy this week's edition of the Film Room. So what a job by this offense on Saturday, keeping us in this ball game. It was close, where you just needed to get enough, and you had enough explosive plays in order to keep our offense unpredictable. And what a job by Kevin, but also Jordan Hudson had a hell of a day on Saturday. I wanted to highlight this one here. I think this is our third series. We get into a max protection look as Miami's got the linebackers walking up around the line of scrimmage. You need to just protect it for as long as possible because we're going to take a shot here. So protection's pretty good. Everybody's got their gap, doing a nice job keeping Kevin clean. But unfortunately, Miami bails as we're using 7 guys here in order to block only 5. So somebody's got to win their one-on-one battle here, and Jordan Hudson does. Runs a great route. Looks like he's breaking in, and at the commit point for this DB, he breaks it off the other way, gets some separation. Kevin just throws him a great ball, breaks the tackle, and this is a nice, almost 50-yard explosive pass here for us early in the day to get this offense rolling. So on the same drive, just a couple plays later, we go back to this max protection look, and I'm okay with it. So we are sending it to Ruben Dane Jr., who I think is going to be a premier edge rusher in the draft when he comes out. But in front of him is P.J. Williams, who's a great player in his own right. So we send the full slide that way, do a nice job. P.J. gets in front of him, uses his help at the right guard spot. Josh Bates and Savion have the nose covered. Andrew Chambly, while he was probably expecting a little bit of help from Savion because this is a 3 technique, this is a very hard block to execute. But his first step doesn't do him any favors. He pretty much picks it up and puts it back down. He's got to get in front of this number 5 and really cover him up a little bit better. He does open the gate a little bit to the inside path to the quarterback, so Kevin has to move around the pocket a little bit. But look at the job Kevin does. This is the drills that they run during training camp. Keeps his feet moving, works around the pocket, never takes his eyes off downfield, and is able to find Ymir Knight here wide open. As you run these max protection plays, you're able to take a shot. Ymir just finds a break in the defense, and the second he feels it, he looks back and is looking for the ball. Great ball placement. Puts it right where he can get it and get the Ponies on the board for 6 points. This isn't as much a scheme play as it is more of just an athletic ability of some of our guys on the edge. So getting to our regular protection stuff, I want to say they fanned this here on the right side to this edge rusher. Do a nice job getting hats on hats up front, giving Kevin enough time. Kevin does start moving around the pocket a little bit. He gets a little jumpy here, which is fine because he's able to get out in space, get some guys open. He does draw linebackers closer to him, which could open up the middle of the field. But he dumps it off to Jay Hud here and absolutely snaps this guy's ankles. This is fun to watch because this is why we brought Jordan Hudson to SMU, for plays like that. Look at the position he puts this corner in. Just breaks it off there and is able to get upfield and gets close to having another touchdown here before taking out of bounds at around the 5-yard line. And do want to give a little look here as I think that's Ymir. That might be Jalen Knight here at the top. He gets waylaid by the Miami DB. This is tough because he can't turn and block this guy until Jordan has the ball. He's getting knocked down before that. But either way, good pitch, good catch, and Jordan Hudson just does the rest. I thought the offensive line did a really nice job responding when Logan Parr was very limited on Saturday. So Savion filled in at the left guard spot. You pulled Andrew Chambly into the game at left tackle. Hadn't seen a lot of Savion at guard yet this season. You know he could do it because he played it at Oklahoma a little bit. He's been more of a tackle body for us, but we get to our counter protection that I've talked about many times here on the film room. So everybody's going to block down. Savion is going to pull around for this edge defender. This is tough because this is Ruben Dane Jr., very good player. And he really follows the hip of PJ when he comes down to collapse this pocket a little bit. Savion is still able to get hands on him, force him to be a little bit wider. Kevin does get jumpy, which is fine, with Ruben Bain so close to him. Kevin is moving around. He's scrambling, looking for work. But he just turns it upfield here and does a really nice job of finding the end zone, as Kevin was not going to be denied on Saturday. And this is another one where he just out-athletes this Miami defensive back. Turns the corner a little bit better than him, going the opposite direction of what the 200 is supposed to be, going to the right instead of the left. Just turns the corner and gets in for another 6 points for SMU. What was really fun on Saturday to watch was the high level of effort that guys were playing with. So we've got a little tunnel screen over here to the right. So the timing on this for the offensive line is going to be something along the lines of set and go. Maybe it's 1,001, 1,000 go as you see them kind of open the gate for these edge rushers to run by, and then they get out in space. So first guy out's the tackle. He's got the flat here. That's PJ. He runs flat. The guy takes a good angle. He does miss the tackle. So PJ turns up and looks for more work. Second guy out is going to be Addison Nichols. He's got the alley, so he's turning up for essentially what will be the next guy. This linebacker comes right to him, does a great job of getting on his guy. And then Josh Bates, the center, he's going to have the rat kill, which means he's going to get any guy that's going to be trying to chase down the screen from behind. That's PJ's edge rusher right here. Does a good job just getting enough of them. What I'm proud of is watch PJ here. He gets out into space. He gets on a little guy right here, right by Romello here. Drives his feet. Ends up dumping him over the pile. I know it's almost into the ball carrier, but you're watching him finish. You're also watching Savion Byrd, who's coming into the picture now on the backside, right on the hash. He gets on a guy. He just starts bullying him, man. He's playing through the echo of the whistle. That's what we've been waiting to see from this unit. It was really fun to watch that, and I think Garen Justice continues to get the best out of his guys week in and week out. To stay on topic as far as effort goes, I think the defense did an exceptional job on Saturday of running to the football. And good things happen when you run to the ball. I've talked about that many times on this show, and I've seen many examples of it. So this is one of those examples. So we're going to watch Marcellus here. He's standing in a press coverage position. He's really almost on top of the numbers. And he gets into his shuffle here. The guys are making some moves for Miami's wide receiving core. Marcellus just stops his feet just for a split second, and Miami's able to get a break on him. At this point, we're beat. Miami's got us beat here over the top. And Carson Beck does put a good throw on the money, but ultimately, Miami can't come down with it. And look who's there. You got Ahmad Moses there. He's running to the ball. He's going to make a play. Ball falls right into his hands. We're able to come up with a huge turnover that sets up SMU with great field position that ultimately ends in a score. So this was one of those early plays that kind of set the tone. It was still a little rainy. We were settling into the game a little bit. But the job that this defense has continued to put on tape as far as running to the football, playing with a high level of effort, Scott Simons has continued to improve this defense week in and week out. The atmosphere at Ford Stadium on Saturday was electric. This was one of those atmospheres that we're going to need to replicate going forward, as this is the new standard for this stadium. But ultimately, it does play a factor in this game. So Miami here, they've got third down. They're trying to get the ball off. And ultimately, the play clock keeps winding down. They're continuing to communicate. They're trying to get everybody lined up on the same page. We're showing a little exotic blitz look here with 7 guys on the line of scrimmage. They can't get it sorted, and Carson Beck starts crashing out. And ultimately, it causes one of the offensive linemen to false start. It was just a comedy of errors for the Hurricanes here on this down. And the crowd definitely had a factor of that. So it was awesome watching Carson Beck lose his composure here. This is a guy that's played in national championships. And at Ford Stadium, for him to come in and make a fool of himself was awesome to see. The cool thing about special teams is you get to watch guys that aren't every down players make an impact in the game. And we've been certainly waiting on a game-changing return from this kickoff return unit. So here, we're going to work a double team between the guy standing on the middle of the pony, which might be Brandon Maiazono here, and I believe it is, and the guy directly to his right. So they're going to double team the R5 here from the return team's right. You count inwards, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the guy that they're going to double here. You get Trip Riordan, he's taking the L5, Stone Eby's got the L4, and then the rest of the team is on the guys that they need to be on. And ultimately, the returner finds the crease here. We do get off to the kicker, which you'd love to make the kicker miss here, but ultimately this was just blocked up really well. So everybody's on the right guys. They're in great spots. They've got great fits here, and this just creates a serious running lane for Link to find and run through. Sets SMU's offense up with a great field position, as that was one of my keys to the game, is win the field position battle. Special teams needed to make a difference, and they did on Saturday. While our kick return unit certainly made a big play, now it was Miami's turn as their punt return unit makes a huge play here. So I'll talk a little bit about the protection here on this punt. We're deep in our own territory. It's one that you just have to get off because you know Miami is going to bring some pressure here. We end up adjusting the protection. Miami's showing an overload here on the left side, so you'll see the personal protectors bump over a little bit. Stone's the one that makes this call. It's the right call from a protection standpoint. And with our left-footed punter, he's always going to roll to his left a little bit before he gets it off. Great job on the protection. He's got plenty of space. There was no rush here that really would have affected this. You do end up kicking it to Malachi Toney, who's one of the most dangerous players in college football, even as a really young guy. He's very explosive. Made some huge plays earlier this year for the Hurricanes. But ultimately, he does make a return here. It ends up being a return all the way down inside the 10-yard line. I do want to note that there are multiple blocks in the backs here. So I don't ever want to hear a Miami fan complaining about the one-sided officiating, because I really just don't believe that's true. So there's one here at the point of attack that might be questionable. That might be it just because I'm an SMU fan, call that one. But here's one that's absolutely blatant here on number 41 for Miami on the head of the Mustang. That's a blindside block. And then there's another one, 2 by the same guy in about 5 seconds. So ultimately, Miami gets to the edge here. It looks like they're going to take it for a touchdown, but I want to back this all the way up. Watch number 26 here. This is Jalen Moses here. He's a safety for us. He's a redshirt freshman. You probably haven't heard me say his name very often this year. He ends up getting blocked here. He ends up really getting held by this Miami guy. He's way away from the play here. He's getting blocked. He almost falls down, but he's on the very backside, and watch him sprint here. He keeps running. He keeps running. He's a guy that saves a touchdown here. So the play's never over. That is a huge play here for the redshirt freshman in order to save a touchdown. Miami kicked a field goal here. That was one of the differences in the ball game. Really great job to Jalen Moses getting that one done. So we're back on defense now, as now we're in overtime. Miami's been driving, and it looked like they were going to get a touchdown here. They've been running the ball well all game, but they're in the shotgun. They're dropping back to pass, and they have a really nice concept here. This is one that, frankly, I thought we were beat. When you're looking at this right here, they've got a guy open in the middle of the field. Number 17, he's open. And I think Malachi Toney here coming across the middle, I think if this ball is thrown a little bit earlier, maybe he doesn't get in for a score, but he certainly gets them within the 5-yard line. Carson Beck holds on to it a little bit too long. He triple fakes and ultimately throws a little bit too late. And Ahmad was in a poor position here as Malachi Toney starts breaking across the middle. Ahmad takes a huge risk coming underneath, and it works out. So this is a great play by Ahmad. He really reads this all the way in as comes up with a huge overtime interception, denies Miami of any points in overtime, where now all SMU would need is a field goal. And just, this is one of the guys that were a preseason All-American for SMU, and he's been playing like it lately. Great job by Ahmad. 2 interceptions in this game to really ignite this defense and save this game for SMU. And of course, now offense gets the ball, and I do want to talk about the walk-off touchdown here, as this offense could not run the ball in regulation. I want to say we had -2 rushing yards in regulation, but something flipped in overtime, as this was the 4th consecutive run in a row to TJ Harden as we were just walking Miami back towards the end zone. And maybe they were getting worn out at this point, but ultimately this is a really nice job. So we've essentially have inside zone here. All of the offensive line is stepping inside to try to just ram this thing in there. You hand the ball to TJ Harden. You get a split flow from Stone Eby here. Kicks the end man out. And TJ Harden just finds the open lane. So there's some overcommitting by Miami's safeties being so low. He walks in just absolutely untouched, which shout out to this girl over here who's already jumping up and down before he's even in the end zone. But this was a statement win for SMU. It was one that is going to be hard to be topped in the near future with a top 10 win at Ford Stadium with how this season has gone on so far. But ultimately, SMU was able to get it done because of their resiliency and their ability to fight back, not just in this game, but after last week as well. This was a total program win, like Rhett called it after the game, and just an unbelievable job top to bottom of this football team.
Man, Billy, so fun to sit back and relive those last few plays of the game, capped off with the 1-yard touchdown run right before pandemonium ensued. And I don't know about you. I know SMU put out a little link where they had the framed picture of the field being rushed. That was one of the quickest purchases I've made in recent memory. So got that. We'll hang that one up in the man cave. But what a day for this team. I mean, before we get to our MVPs, I mean, I can't think of a game in recent memory, at least in my, I guess it would be 8 years around the program now. I guess I'm getting up there. But where this team has felt more inspired, the stadium has felt more electric. This was one of those once in a generation, I would say. Maybe you're grouping generations by each head coach. This was one of those program defining wins on Saturday.
No question. It really was. And I think the moment of it too, coupled with the loss the previous week, really, really important. You know, that for them to bounce back and show that competitive nature. Of course, we haven't even talked about Rhett Lashley's extension and just how important that was, getting those guys to know, hey, he's sticking around, he's here. The vision is still being built day by day. And this was a massive moment for Rhett Lashley and this football program as a whole. There's no doubt about it. When you have these opportunities to make statements, you need to take advantage of them. You look at the Florida State game last year. Obviously, the TCU game was a rivalry game. You had the Pitt game. You had the Louisville game last year. You didn't necessarily make the full statement against Clemson in the championship game, but you did. And then you go out on the road and beat Clemson. But this is the biggest win, I think, in SMU, history under Rhett Lashley. And no offense, sent to the AAC championship. They had gotten there. If they would have lost that, there would have been no shame in that, playing a good Tulane team. But this win against Miami, and in particular with what had just happened the week prior, most important win in the Rhett Lashley era. And they've got a couple key Dallas kids young men to thank in part for this win.
Yeah, my co-MVPs for this week, I am going to give 2 because I don't think we win this game if either one of these guys don't end up at SMU, because both of these guys are original high school signees. They were both part of Rhett's very first signing class in 2022. And I'm going to give it to KJ and Ahmad Moses. Ahmad, you flipped him over from UTSA. Everybody knows KJ's Missouri State story by now, and both had paths to this point that you would have not looked to them to have these kind of days 4 years ago. So I'm really stoked for these guys. It would have been an absolute impossible choice because of kind of the path that I'm referring to, where Kevin is such an underrated guy. Ahmad is a guy that wasn't really even going to end up here until Rhett got the job, convinced him to flip and come here. And they've both just been on kind of this crash course for face of the program, I would say. I mean, KJ, obviously, with what he's done the last couple of years, but this is no discredit to Isaiah Wacobia, wearing the 23 and all the great things he's done, but I think Ahmad is becoming the face of this defense. Back-to-back weeks with interceptions, such a big game this week. I mean, he is now becoming a lot of people's favorite defensive Mustang, certainly at the safety position.
And look, I can tell you the grass is certainly greener on this side of things than at Missouri State and UTSA for Kevin Jennings and Ahmad Moses. It's almost like they called up our friends at AKM Turf and Greens to get their yard completely redone. And look, when they're living in their mansions after their post-playing careers, they're going to have a chance to build out the backyard of their dreams with our friends at AKM Turf and Greens. Go to akmturfandgreens.com today and start that process for you and your family. Get the backyard all lined up, ready to go for the holidays with our friends at AKM Turf and Greens. You get $500 off your project today when you mention On the Pony Express. So, Hayden, I obviously can't disagree with your MVPs. I would, of course, say that Jordan Hudson, very, very important as well. His production in big games is really, really starting to be his calling card. And yes, SMU would love more consistency from the passing game as a whole. And if they get this type of production and consistency from this group as a whole, the rest of the year, they're going to be really hard to beat. But Jordan Hudson, 11 catches, 136 yards, no touchdowns on the day, but he made some catches that were incredibly difficult, set up Sam Keltner's game-tying field goal. Also a tone setter, too, as a whole. He's one of the best blockers on the team. He's one of the toughest guys on the team. What he's playing through, I mean, he's taped up like I don't even know what to compare him to, but he looks like he's taped up like an offensive lineman. I mean, truthfully, kind of the gloves and the tape on the gloves, and then you've got the, robo arm going. So he really is battling through it like everybody is this time of year. But for him to have a game like that really just stood out to me.
Yeah, I nearly put 3. That would have felt like cheating, but he definitely deserves to be.
Had the whole podium, I guess.
Yeah, man. But he was certainly running coast to coast. And as we move on to the coast to coast section of our show, unfortunately, that win, while so great for SMU, does hurt the ACC, as SMU and Georgia Tech hurt the odds of the ACC being a multi-bid lead. Georgia Tech, for those of y'all who missed it, they were upset by NC State. Yellow Jackets lose their first game of the year, which would not be a huge deal. They still would have controlled their own path. But now I think there's 5 ACC teams with 1 loss. It's going to be absolute chaos heading into the last few weeks. But I want to give a shout out to this NC State team. They were decimated by injuries heading into this game. The leading rusher of the ACC, Hollywood Smothers, he was out, replaced by Duke Scott. Duke Scott comes to this game, rushes for 196 yards. NC State put up 583 yards of offense. Wolfpack quarterback CJ Bailey, he's put together some really great games this season. And I thought he tossed another gem on Saturday night. 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Haynes King, while he's probably my pick for first-team All-ACC quarterback, continues his Heisman campaign despite the loss. He accounted for 511 yards by himself. The difference in this game, Yellow Jackets settled for 3 field goals, and then they missed another one. They just couldn't finish drives on Saturday night. Wolfpack win by 2 scores. It was the second ACC field storm of the weekend. They win 48-36.
And NC State has dished out a loss to Virginia and now Georgia Tech. So NC State showing what they could be if they found consistency.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of what SMU just did this past weekend and going over to Clemson as well. But I think for me, NC State is such a peculiar program because they've not lived up to, I think, the talent level and baseline talent level that they have in that football program. CJ Bailey, second year on campus, he's a stud. You can tell he's going to probably be a high draft pick at some point. He's kind of like Kevin, but he has some size to him in a sense. You know, I'm not saying Kevin's like small, but he's on the shorter side. It's just going to be a conversation around his NFL prospects whenever that time comes. But CJ Bailey just really going to mature so much over the next couple of years physically as well. He has the talent. They need to get him some more help so that can be more consistently a good thing. And NC State, they're a fun place to play. It is a really, really tough environment. I know they've kind of had some big wins at that home stadium over the last couple of years or so, kind of knocking off for some key programs that were in good spots. So we'll see kind of what happens as the 9-team ACC schedule kind of comes about. But SMU is not set to go to NC State until 2028. Same year they'll go to Virginia Tech. So I'm kind of looking forward to that run of games and Georgia Tech as well. So pretty good weight there for SMU. But NC State is kind of a house of horrors for some of these highly rated teams too.
We might go to all 4 of the away games that year. They play at Stanford too. That'd be a fun. That would be a fun away game season. But another team that's really good on the road, Duke Blue Devils. I mean, they're on a roll right now. They beat Clemson Tigers, which unfortunately it doesn't make our win as impressive. But Clemson's lost 5 out of the last 6 home games versus a Power 4 opponent. I mean, unfortunately, Death Valley is losing some of that shine right now. The Blue Devils jumped out to a 21-7 lead, and to Clemson's credit, they roared back into this game, tied it, and it was a back-and-forth battle. Duke they drive the field, score a game-tying touchdown. Manny Diaz elected to go for 2, and then they converted. So Duke hangs on to win at Death Valley, first time in 45 years. SMU is really lucky to not have to play this Duke team. They're so hot right now that if they can hang on, they're going to be a team that will make some noise, in my opinion, later this year. It was not Clemson's offense that was the issue, though, on Saturday. 560 yards for the Tigers, hit a season high in points scored. Defense could not get off the field. First time Clemson has lost 4 home games since 1998. They're now sitting at 3-5. And look, I think Clemson is going to miss a bowl game. Their last 4 games are Florida State at home, at Louisville, Furman, which will be a win, but at South Carolina. I mean, that is a brutal stretch where you're going to have to win 3 out of those 4 games to sniff anything. I mean, it sucks for Dabo Swinney. I mean, he's done such a good job, but now the memes are coming out of, well, y'all can fire me, I'll just go somewhere else. But you got to speak to, what have you done for me lately?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think Dabo Swinney needs to obviously make some changes. There's a lot of things that as far as his processes that need to kind of get a refresh with college football going the way it is. But can you not see Dabo Swinney on the field at Louisville with like a BYOG type of press conference midfield, knocking off Louisville just to tick them off enough heading into their game against SMU, I could. But Louisville also lost Isaac Brown, which is a huge deal. Kind of a quick hit that shouldn't be glossed over is Louisville did lose Isaac Brown for the season. So who knows kind of how that impacts Miller Moss, who is kind of in that game, or should be in that kind of game manager type of mode. But the last 4 weeks of ACC football are going to be completely, I think, bananas. We're going to see some teams obviously take each other out. SMU plays Louisville. Pitt plays Georgia Tech. Miami plays Pitt. Duke plays Wake Forest. Or Duke plays, I think Duke plays Wake Forest, but Duke plays Virginia. You've got some key matchups coming up down the stretch that are really going to obviously determine who ends up in Charlotte. And great thing is it can go a bunch of different ways.
And that's why I love being in this league. It's so fun. I mean, having 17 teams that I think we can eliminate Florida State, North Carolina, and Clemson at this point, which is so ironic considering the 3 that voted against us. Shout out to NC State for being that one that flipped. We'll always kind of have that bond with them because of that. But speaking of battles for playoff spots, I mean, let's talk about the Group of 5 battle that's going on right now. There was a serious game up in Denton, just up the road. 7-1 UNT hosted 7-0 Navy Midshipmen. And I think the Mean Green flipped the switch on the Naval Academy. I mean, true freshman Caleb Hawkins rushed for 197 yards, 4 touchdowns. Navy throws 2 interceptions, which pretty much happens every time Navy drops back to pass. It's either a giant completion or the ball gets picked off. They're not built to throw the ball. But North Texas ends Navy's 10-game winning streak heading back to last year. And the American is going to come down to the end. There are 6 one-loss teams heading into Week 11, very similar to the ACC. But remember, Navy plays Army after the conference championship game weekend. You play Notre Dame and USF and Memphis before then. Navy has a really tough stretch if they're going to get back into that AAC championship game.
No doubt. Let's hit some quick hitters and get the folks out of here. Again, we'll have the preview podcast right up after this. We're going to record it, turn around, and do that. So stay with us on the feed, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Hit that subscribe button. Leave us a rating, review. Auburn fires Hugh Freeze after the 10-3 loss to Kentucky. Man, did Mark Stoops just save his job? I don't know. $37 million says he probably did. But really, really ugly pair of teams there. And you also have another
SEC, both of them.
Yeah, I mean, just, God, so bad.
Second leg of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy, Army beats Air Force 20-17. So Air Force has now lost to Navy and Army. So the winner of the Army-Navy game will take the trophy back. Florida State gets its first conference win in over a calendar year. They beat Wake 42-7. This was one that I was shocked with how Wake played last week against SMU. Maybe now they were hungover, but regardless, Seminoles do get back in the win column, first time in over a year, which is outrageous. But Memphis improved to 8-1. They rushed for 5 touchdowns, beat Rice 38-14. Were you going to say something about Florida State?
Yeah, I did pick Florida State to get it done. I was pretty confident on that one. I just a different athlete, it's been bad at Florida State, but I was pretty confident playing on the East Coast, at least in their home confines, that they could figure it out for 4 quarters. I did not obviously pick any sort of thing like that, but Wake is going to be a team that I think under Jake Dickert is going to be hanging around bowl eligibility, getting to bowl games. So it's not an indictment on where they're going. They're just in the very, very beginning phases of it. And it's something that, I think will be a really good lesson for them, just kind of dealing with the success of beating a playoff team. Who would have thunk? And, having to turn around and play a team that, has that high level of talent that, really on any given Saturday, Florida State can wake up and play football as they showed in week 1.
So I think the more surprising one is UNC getting its first win.
Pick that one too. I was great at the teams that suck that are kind of maybe figuring it out a little bit. No, Syracuse can't, dude. Did you watch that game on Friday night? It was Syracuse, which I feel bad for coaches when this stuff happens. They made some changes on the offensive staff. I'm like, what are we doing here? Can the guy get credit for bringing in Steve Angeli and then let Steve Angeli come back next year and then see how it goes?
Completely different team after he got hurt.
It's really hard. And their backup quarterback, like if you would have asked an SMU fan, let's just play a hypothetical here. Hey, you have this opportunity to get an LSU transfer quarterback. We're not going to tell you anything about him outside of that. It's not Garrett Nussmeier. Would you take him and be happy with him as your backup quarterback? Most people would have said, yeah, absolutely. That's great. Huge. Oh, he's played for this and that. No, Ricky Collins, not good. And then from there, it's been a complete drop off. And Joseph Filardi, God bless him, like really, really difficult situation to go into. And this Syracuse offense just not the same, obviously. I can't believe they fired coaches over how they're playing after Steve Angeli got hurt.
It's not a reflection of their they're down to their third team quarterback. Like
He was leading the country in passing like 3 weeks after he had his season ended.
Yeah.
Crazy. Anyway,
the quarterback. I saw a joke about Colorado Buffaloes. They lose 52-17 at home, and people were like, "Well, maybe it was the right call retiring Shadur's jersey because the Buffaloes are horrendous." I mean, it blows my mind with how much momentum that they had with Coach Prime, with Travis Hunter, and everything that they did to fall off a cliff in their first year without Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders. It's crazy. But the one that surprised me of the weekend, I thought Georgia was going to blow the doors off of Florida. Florida keeps it close, but Bulldogs pull ahead late for win at the world's largest cocktail party. Oklahoma beats Tennessee in a college football playoff elimination game, essentially. So I think the Vols are out. University of Houston, they clowned us for so many years about attendance, and then their top 25 team, they play West Virginia at home in front of 25,000 was the announced. It was probably more like 10,000.
There's dozens
in a
of
40,000 stadium. Connor Wiegman counts for 3 turnovers. I mean, that's a team that, while I wish we played them more often, I still hate them almost as much as TCU.
You know, I actually, a couple things. Would love if SMU played Houston every year. Now, granted, I don't love going to play Houston. They should play it like, I mean, I don't want to say a neutral side or whatever, but it would kind of be ugly. But like Dallas versus Houston is like, I can get behind that. You know, you're from down there. I did not actually know that they lost this football game. All I saw was the memes about the attendance. Wow. I'm actually learning something right now. Maybe that's a pretty big indictment on where the Big 12 is. But another crazy thing from this weekend is Vol Twitter is starting to fire up the Josh Heupel hot seat conversation. Like,
I don't know if I'm in on that.
Similar to Penn State in the sense that the guy took over the program when it was like just ugly. They had a mass, like, and rightfully so, they got it right. A mass, what would it be? A pushback on the hire. Was it going to be Greg Schiano or something like that? Or was it going to be Mike Gundy or somebody? Search that, who was, Tennessee coaching search, fans, athletic director. Might have gotten the athletic director fired. I don't know. And Josh Heupel has pulled them out of what was pretty deep hole and has put them in the college football playoff and had them in position to be in the college football playoff at least, except you lose your starting quarterback before the season. You go out and get a guy who at least like had you right there against Georgia, had you right there against Oklahoma in a sense. I don't understand. I just don't get it.
Tony Elliott was the most prominent name at that time.
There's another one. We might.
James Franklin, PJ Fleck, and Sonny Dykes were also rumored at the time.
Somebody was just talking about it the other day. I'll have to try to find the clip, but whoever was going to be the hire, it was pushed back, and they might have even gotten the AD fired. I don't recall, but wild times. Anyway, point is Tennessee's in a much better spot than they were a while back. It's crazy how quickly things spiral for some of these coaches, and it's nuts. If you fire Josh Heupel, he'd be hired at Arkansas. He'd be hired at Auburn. I mean, I think at least. I agree. Or Oklahoma would fire Brent Venables and go get him. I don't know.
I think if that happened, he would be
the number one for a lot of people. I think he would overtake James Franklin as number one most wanted head coach.
Totally see it. See it. So anyway, well, this was a fun one, man. And what a win for SMU taking down Miami. We hope you guys enjoyed this edition of the pod. We're going right into our preview podcast after this. So hope you guys tune in for both episodes, of this whole, if you gotten to this point, thank you. And then of course, going into the preview podcast, and we'll be back at it next week. We might even release the podcast a little early, maybe on
balance it out.
Yeah, we'll see. We might give you the recap pod a little bit earlier in the week. So travel is heating up, holidays are heating up. So again, we appreciate all you guys for listening, hanging with us, and we hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week as SMU hopes to avoid the letdown against Boston College, but soak this one in as a fan, because these things don't happen often, and SMU got a massive win over Miami to set them up for a potential run to the ACC championship. So for Hayden Howerton, I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll catch you next time on the Pony Express podcast.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.